Hello, everyone. Welcome to Pine Lily chapter of the Florida Native Plant Society's July meeting. We are pleased today to have Chris Kincaid of Osceola County to talk about Osceola County's urban forest. They're doing a lot and they're having a lot of plans for the future, and I think it will be great to hear from our urban forester. So I will get rid of myself, and there you go. Without
There
further
we
ado,
go.
here is Chris.
So my name is Chris Kincaid. I'm the Osceola County Urban Forester. I am in the Parks and Public Lands office. I spend most of my time in the field, but I'm also in the admin building quite a bit, so I can be contacted by phone. I can give you all that information should you desire it. Right now, we're kind of in the closing days of the Osceola County Urban Forestry Management Plan, which has been, we don't have to talk about COVID and what that did for a whole year to all of us, a year and a half. But we finally have this plan in the hands of somebody who can take it and make it nice and pretty for the BOCC. And it should be presented to them hopefully within weeks now and not months. A few of the management goals, and this is not by any means exhaustive, these are just a few. The primary things that we've done so far is that we have done a canopy coverage survey of the urban growth boundary, which is in the northern half of, or the northern third, so loosely, of Osceola County. But we have done a canopy coverage survey, and we've also done what I would consider a limited street tree survey. When I say limited, I mean 26,000 trees. And the only reason I say limited is, again, because I just know that there are so many more that need to be looked at along our right-of-ways, within our parks and public lands and many other places that the county owns, county properties, different things, whether that be a fire station or a library or any type of public facility. But our number one goal is to reduce hazards and liability. And then back to canopy coverage, of course, you know, with the development at the rate that we're seeing and have seen for many years, we want to increase canopy coverage, but that may not even be a realistic goal. Let's just be honest. So no net loss would probably be a better statement in regards to that. But I'm just going to say increase canopy coverage because that's my goal. Increase diversity, and that means species diversity. Increase tree health. When we did the tree inventory, we figured out that there were a lot of, we don't have a lot of dead trees. Usually those are usually handled pretty quickly. But we did find that we have quite a few in poor health. And so, you know, how do you figure out what that means? Well, this process in which we have begun to analyze and inventory these individual street trees, trail trees, and when we say street trees, I'm just going to use that as a generalized term because what that essentially means is any tree that the public might come in contact with, meaning that it could provide a hazard potential. I mean, they're certainly, I mean, they are an asset. These trees are an asset. They have, excuse me, they have monetary value. They have economic value. They drive economics in the community. But they also can be a liability. So we'll touch on that a little bit later. One of the more currently poignant things that we need to be thinking about, of course, is to increase environmental equity. Most studies find that lower income areas and areas of minorities usually have less trees. Now, I am strictly We haven't studied that too closely, but from my canopy coverage study, I would dare say, and of course it's just anecdotal currently, but yes, I would say that that is true. Trees drive a lot of different human behaviors, and so all of that needs to be looked at very closely. And I just threw these basic goals together tonight. Yes, they are included within the Urban Forestry Management Plan, but these are not, like I said, a complete list, and some of these are personal. So I just kind of grabbed a few and threw them in here because I feel like they're of great value. So last but not least, increase community involvement and awareness. Currently, the canopy coverage, well, and this was as of 2 years ago, is 36% here in the county. Based on iTree data, which is U.S. Forest Service inventory, our canopy assessment application. It's a free software, it's freeware. We are looking at something a little more advanced at this point. We will see how that goes when we present that requisition, but for now, this is what we're going with. Open space coverage is at 35% and open water coverage is at 17%. So you can kind of deduce what you will from that. It's just a little bit of basic numbers. We're not really going to get much into all of that tonight as much as we are touching on diversity. So, and this map to me is just more of ecological interest than anything. It doesn't say anything about urban forest diversity or street tree diversity. This is more on the overall total species richness. And it's just a really neat look at where those areas are. And so you can see, obviously, that many of the river basins that flow into Florida, that's really the hot spots. Of course, the Appalachians, the Ozarks, but I just love the map and just thought it would be something interesting to look at as far as species richness on a natural history scale. So in regards to species richness, or species diversity, one of the main reasons that we're so concerned about this is because some of what you're seeing here, and I'm sure you're all familiar with the chestnut blight that ripped through the Appalachians for about 40 or 50 years there and pretty much decimated that species as we know it. Dutch elm disease was introduced in the 30s in America, and just, it still is a big problem. Gypsy moth, the woolly adelgid, I've always pronounced it aegeid for some reason, but that was just a mispronunciation because I've been fascinated with the hemlocks since I first went to North Carolina many, many years ago. But if you've ever been to North Carolina, as you're hiking through the woods at various places, Tennessee, etc., you will see these ancient hemlocks that are just standing skeletons, and that's what did it. Emerald ash borer. Some of these have not affected Florida, but have the potential to. Asian longhorn beetle, they say that this has the potential to cause more damage than Dutch elm, chestnut blight, or gypsy moss combined. Now, that's potential, I guess. And then we'll step up to something that I actually experienced when I moved to Florida, and that was the red bay ambrosia beetle infestation that moved down the seaboard. And I'll show you a map here shortly of that. But that is the one that, and it's always, it's never easy to document, or it's never easy to figure out. It's always something really bizarre. And so, but these beetles, various beetles and moths and so forth, they can vector various funguses. And anyway, that created the issue of the red bay trees just completely dying off in mass. I first saw it up in St. Johns County, and I was driving through the woods there in Matanzas State Forest, and at that point, I didn't even know, what I was looking at. I just noticed that throughout the forest there were various dead trees everywhere, and that they were a deciduous tree. And I reported it to my boss, and she thought I was nuts because I was pretty young at that time. I didn't know much about Florida species, and but anyway, yeah, at that point, that was about 2007. It had moved down into through Duval into St. John's, and now, of course, I'm sure you're all familiar with it. That's the one that also affects avocado trees, sassafras, and anything in that particular family, Lauraceae. And then just real quick, Texas Phoenix palm disease, which is no longer considered that they don't go by that name. They call it lethal bronzing. And so we're currently experiencing that in Osceola County and many other counties in Florida. So I'm going to move on up to a map here. And this is just, I think this only goes up through 2000. Oh, actually goes, well, they've even got it projected into 2022 here. So that's interesting. I didn't even realize that. That's great. So if you look there at the initial detection of the fungus, it moved extremely rapidly and now has moved all over the southeast. I'm sitting here looking at it being detected in Arkansas. That's where I'm originally from, if you couldn't tell by the accent. 2019 looks like it's already moved up into central Arkansas. So it's amazing how quickly some of this can happen. Point being is that tree diversity is something that we have to think about, particularly when you look at the slides that we'll show you here shortly. This is the historical and current distribution of the lethal bronzing across the state from 2008 to 2018. So you can see it's become quite prevalent. I do know that there are municipalities that spend enormous amounts of money inoculating trees just because of this, because they also affect our Florida state tree, the cabbage palm. And with the fact that, many of our inventories, cabbage palms make up a huge amount of that. And I realize that they're not technically a tree, and that, they don't provide some of the same benefits that large hardwoods or something like that does. But it's important to recognize that they're an iconic part of Florida, and they do provide a lot of habitat. So this is just a screenshot of our the software that we use. This is from a company out of Colorado. This is called Planet Geo, and it is. Oh, I'm so sorry. Anyway, it's Tree Plotter. So Tree Plotter is a dynamic. I guess I could have pulled up the actual live view, which would have been a lot more interesting. If any of you are ever interested in looking at it, I'll be happy to do another presentation on it. But so each one of these points here on the map represent the species profile across the urban growth boundary. So this is 26,907 trees that we have documented and have assessed for risk, assessed for health and condition and species and various things. What this allows us to do, and we can filter out information from this, from condition, from risk analysis. So I can go in here and I can say, well, on this particular property, I want to look at everything that's dead, and I can just break out these 200 trees. Or I want to look at these 200 trees by species composition. So I'll know if we've got something running through like, well, the Phoenix disease, the lethal bronzing. How many, how many cabbage palms do we have on this property, and are they important enough to us from a ecological or a cultural or an aesthetic view to start inoculating them? Currently, we are not inoculating palms in the county. We do have a few palms that are being inoculated on certain properties based on their value, because they're, big, decorative, fancy date palms or whatever they are. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. We're not spending the amount of money that like Tampa's spending on inoculating palms. I think they're in the big money category at this point because it is so prevalent over there. So currently, this is the top 10 composition of inventory trees. And when I say inventory trees, I mean the 26,000 that we've actually looked at. And those are the trees that are along the roadways. They are in a park where they could potentially, people might be around them. So a lot of it is based on the tree risk assessment. But this is all about just species makeup. And so I hope you can all see it clearly enough on your screens, but live oak is at 41%, or basically 42%. Cabbage palmetto comes in at number 2, and then longleaf pine, crepe myrtle, and then slash pine. So in the next screen, we're going to look at some of this more combined, where I've combined the pine species, I'll combine the cypress species. So yeah, if you can all see this, you see that it's not as diverse as it should be. I guess is what I'm trying to say. And there's a lot of reason behind that. I'm sure you can deduce that. We're going to plant species that are, either long-lived or easy to maintain or culturally appropriate or aesthetically pleasing. But we are and have been trying to increase diversity for some time. But with this new software and with the urban growth or the urban forestry management plan soon to be approved, hopefully, we can start moving forward with some actual on the ground planning, or should I say planting. But at least, the Chinese elm, Mexican fan palm, crepe myrtle are the only ones on here that are non-native, I guess. It doesn't mean they're bad, but of course, everybody, you guys have to make up that for your own decision, I guess. We all have a little bit different opinions about different varying species. We don't want to be messing with invasive species, but at the same time, you're going to see in the next coming slides that, unfortunately, that's part of the makeup of the canopy, and it's part of the makeup of the inventory. So now on this particular slide, what I've done is just kind of combined a few species. So now you see that longleaf pine and slash combined make up the second highest number of inventoried species at 16%. Cabbage palm comes in at 12%. So bald cypress and pond cypress combined come in at 11%, just behind that. And then we go directly to crepe myrtle, a Mexican fan palm. So obviously, well, where do these Mexican fan palms come from? Well, they've been planted up and down these right-of-ways, mainly out 192 in various areas. And they are impressive and they are pretty, but, and I mean, I have my own opinions about that, and we'll see how it goes over time. Southern magnolia, 4%. But hopefully this gives you a little bit of idea about some of our street trees and some of our park trees. Now, these are much smaller. This is about the best I could do with this. But this is basically a report run from the inventory software, where we get to look a little bit more at total overall species. So you'll look to your right in the far column and you'll see the capital N's, and you'll also see asterisks, and then you'll also see a little bit of, some of them are numbered. So the ones that are just qualified with an N, those are non-native. The ones that have an asterisk means that they're on the category 1 or 2, they're on category 2. And then if they've got the little 1 next to it, that means that they're a category 1 invasive. So you can see, like, I assume you can see the small print, but if you'll look down at number 35, they're numbered from 1 down on the left-hand side there. That is a Chinese tallow or popcorn tree. So we've got 54 of those that were documented. Well, I can guarantee you we've got thousands of them, but at least we know where 54 of them are. And so, you know, the question is, well, when do we start attacking those? I noticed so many of them here lately just because they start to really stand out in the woods this time of year with a little bit of a varying color profile. But if you look up at the top there, live oak is still number 1, cabbage palm is still number 2, crepe myrtle is 3. So longleaf pine / pond pine, and then of course the Mexican fan palm, and so forth and so on. And then after that, they just start to drop off pretty dramatically right there at about number 26 at the London Plains sycamore tree. But this information is really telling. And of course, you know, these numbers are very small. I mean, when we get down here, okay, so here's Chinaberry. We've got 15 Chinaberries out there somewhere. And all of that is being analyzed and planned for removal and replacement. But it's a little overwhelming. Well, it's very overwhelming to me, but it should be overwhelming to you to a certain degree. But this is still just a tiny little, it's just a small outtake of what we're dealing with. And it's all we have right now as far as data. Now we can crunch this in various ways. Like I said, we can take it by property, we can take it by district. You know, and of course this says nothing about private properties or well, any type of private property, whether that be business or residential. So, and then of course we get down here towards the bottom and you start seeing strange things like Texas red oak, Chickasaw plum, common fig, sago palm. I mean, these have not been, these were all certified arborists who were track qualified, but I still question some of this. You know, it's like they've never been ground checked because there's not enough time in the day. But anyway, I believe one of you guys or gals sent me these, or maybe it's just a combined, it's just a real simple little list of 20. And I like to kind of use this as a general guideline, and this is just a good group of trees that we can look at to increase our diversity. Of course, some of these are already on here. Some of them are not appropriate for all locations. It's, you know, right tree, right place, right height, right location. But the plan is to start crunching these numbers and getting a team of people that can tackle this in a expeditious manner. So that's where we're at. I just kind of wanted to give y'all a brief overview of kind of where we're going with this and why. And if you guys have any questions, I'll be happy to attempt to answer.
Thank you, Chris.
You're welcome.
Yeah, that's a That's a nice list. Could definitely use some more theaters, and I mean, we don't know what's going to happen with the cabbage palm.
No, we don't. And that's again, are we prepared for the next pathogen? And the answer is typically no. I mean, I just want to be completely honest. But we've been lucky as far as the lethal bronzing goes. I would say I've seen some of it, but not as much as they're seeing in other counties. But um, what if something came in that would wipe out, live oaks, God forbid? What would we do? What would be our plan to replace those? What would we replace them with? So those are all questions that kind of need to be kept at least on the radar. So yeah, sorry to ramble there.
No, you're fine. We don't have any questions in the chat yet.
Well, that's fine. We'll give them just a second. I would like to say that a big part of what we're doing is, of course, the hazard tree analysis. I was recently went through the track qualification process, which is tree risk assessment qualification. And it's a very in-depth way of looking at trees based on their location, their size, the soil profile, age, the makeup. I mean, it just goes on and on, their structural components. But to have that in our quiver and to have these trees of all the ones that are in the inventory, the 26,700 some odd trees that we've actually inventoried, those so there's three classes of analysis. And so those are just the general analysis. So what you do is you plug in a little bit of information and then it gives you a risk assessment. And so that can be low, high, imminent. So anyway, all of that's really important. So now I can go back and look at some of these that we know. Obviously, if they're dead and they come up as a high risk tree, well, they've probably already been removed because I've already distributed that information to our various interagents or inter-office people. We have quite a few different internal departments that deal with trees and deal with tree contractors. That's another part of this, is we are working to try and centralize this and try and streamline it to where it's more cost effective for the county and provides more benefits to the citizens and make it easier for us too. Mm-hmm. So I do appreciate y'all very much, and look forward to doing it again.
Yeah, if there's anything that we can do as a Native Plant Society to advocate for, increased urban forest canopy, tree plantings that are site appropriate with natives rather than non-natives, we'd be happy to assist.
Yeah, I think that you'll also see, and a big part of the plan has to do with community engagement and community involvement, and trying to get to those areas that are a little bit underserved or are showing up as more built out. Those areas that are built out, obviously, a lot of the areas that were built out many, many years ago, maybe there wasn't the same level of requirements for contractors to replace numbers of trees and to pay into the tree fund, etc. So it seems like a lot of those places are lacking in trees. And so we're trying to touch on the areas that have the lowest canopy coverage percentage. And so we have targeted those. We know where they are. After this plan is approved, we're going to start looking into tackling all that. It just takes time and money. That's all.
Yeah, it definitely has to be a funding and staffing priority for sure.
Exactly. Yeah.
All right. Yeah. So still no questions in the chat. So, oh, do you want to provide contact information or anything in case people?
Yeah, so I can be reached at the admin building. My email is chris.kincaid@osceola.org. That's CHRIS.KINCAID@osceola.org.
Okay, I dropped that in the chat. So, and people heard it too.
Very good.
Right. Well, really appreciate your time. I hope you feel better.
Thank you. It's good seeing you.
Yeah, you too. And
Take care
everybody
now.
else, I guess, everybody have a great Friday and weekend.
All right. Y'all have a good one.